Hi, my name is Ahmed Abou-Taleb. I'm a program manager in the Common Language Runtime team.
And my name is Grunkemeyer. I'm a developer on the Common Language Runtime team.
Today we'll talk about managed resources, how to create them and how to use them, and what are the new features that we have in WebB.
First, I want to give you a brief description about resources. Resources are static data that apps need to interact with users. Examples of that are images, icons, media files, and string tables. Resources can be either embedded in the assembly or linked to it, and in both cases, it will be listed in the assembly manifest. There are two types of resources: non-localizable resources like logo.bmb and products.info in this example, and they are language neutral. The other type of resources is localizable resources, where the application can have a copy for each culture. In this example, messages.resources. To enumerate all of the resources in the assembly, you can use assembly.getManifest resource names, which will return, in this case, logo.bmp, products.dat, and messages.resources. And to get a specific resource, you can use assembly.getManifest resource stream using the resource name. Those functions are best used with non-localizable resources, since they don't support the culture fallback feature that we will describe later. To access localizable resources, you should use system.resources.resourcemanager.getObject and getStream and getString. Now let me show you a Hello World demo using resources. What we will do is we will start with an application that we have that use hard-coded strings. So in here, we are using the console write line to write good morning. We will compile this app, and using ILDASM, we will check the app. We will check the manifest of the assembly. So there is no resources in the manifest. What we will do is we'll use Notepad to create a string table. We will name it messages.text. So we will add a key called greeting. And we need to convert it to our binary format, so we will use ResGen, which is a tool shipping with the SDK to convert messages.text into messages.resources. Okay, so now the conversion is done. If we check, we will find messages.resources. What we need now is we need to go back to the app, and we need to start using resources instead of the hard-coded strings. So we will add a using statement for system.resources, and we will add another using statement for system.reflection. In here, we will instantiate a resource manager. We will call it RM. The resource manager will require two parameters. The first one is the base name. In our case, it's the name of the .resources file without the extension, so it will be messages. And we will use the assembly class and the reflection namespace to get the executing assembly. So what we need to do now is we need to start using the resource manager to get the string. So we will call resource manager get string, and we will give it the key name, which is greeting. The final step is to compile this. So we will compile the app.cs file, but we will need to embed the resources. So we will use the /res, and we will add messages.resources. Okay, now the compilation is done. We will call the application. Okay, the message is correct. So we will open the manifest. So we will find here a section about the resources. So this is the embedded resources that we just added.
Let's talk about resource fallback with different cultures. So if you ship an application, you will ship something like main.exe. It will include your resources with embedded or linked into that assembly, named something like messages.resources. So then if you wanted to localize this to various cultures, such as if this was in your UK English and you wanted to localize this to US English, you then need to ship what we call a satellite assembly. And there's a naming convention for them as well. Your main.exe here, you need to use the same simple name for your assembly for the satellite assembly. So you have a satellite assembly named main.resources.dll. And inside the assembly manifest, it also needs to explicitly say that the culture is en-us. All satellite assemblies have the exact same name here, but the culture is different. So that's a very key point that you need to know. Within this satellite assembly, there is a file called messages.en-us.resources. This contains your US English version of these resources. So this will allow you to ship your US English resources along with your British resources in your assembly. If you then want to localize to another culture, such as Quebec, then you can do that over here as well. So culture info defines a fallback hierarchy here, where we have a French-Canadian culture for Quebec that then falls back to French, spoken in sort of a region-neutral way. This is French in a general abstract notion. It is not French as spoken in a particular country generally. So then within the French-Canadian satellite assembly, once again, it's named main.resources.dll, and your culture is fr-ca for French-Canadian. Then you have a file in there named messages.fr-ca.resources. This will give you your French resources as well. The interesting thing here is that resource fallback can help you out in a number of ways. If you only localize to French-Canadian, then you ship this satellite assembly, and then we will try to do, if your current thread's current UI culture is set to French-Canadian, we will look for this satellite assembly for doing your resource lookups. If we can't find this, or this satellite assembly does not contain your resources, we then fall back to the French satellite assembly, and we try to load that. If we can't find the French assembly or your resources aren't there, we then fall back to your main assembly and giving you your neutral resources. So this way you can localize only a portion of your resources to a particular culture. If, for the most part, you do localize to French and then you need to change 2 or 3 things to speak to your Quebec audience, you can do this in a very easy manner by only specifying the resources that change for Quebec in this particular satellite assembly. Generally, you probably want to ship the region-neutral versions of a satellite assembly. So you can localize to French in an abstract way. So over here, I want to also show you a problem that we run into with satellite assemblies. So if we did have the British resources here, and we then don't want to ship a separate satellite assembly for your British resources. You don't want to ship this satellite assembly at all. In many ways, you don't want the resource manager to probe for this satellite assembly because it will never exist. The way you do that is by explicitly adding an attribute to your main assembly. The neutral resources language attribute explicitly tells the resource manager what language your neutral resources are in. So if you put this on your main assembly and pass in the value en-gb, then the resource manager will never probe for that satellite assembly. This is a performance optimization for this particular culture. And it also will be required in the future for would-be applications using click once deployment. So this is an example of fallback. Let's go see this in the real VS IDE. You can build all these satellite assemblies on your own in the command line using resgen and A-Link, al.exe. But the Visual Studio IDE makes this much simpler. Let's go see that demo now. So here I have a project that shows an example of using culture fallback. Here I have an application where you can select a culture info from a list box, and that will display a culture-specific string and then show a flag for that culture as well. So in here, here's U.S. English, French, something appropriate for France, and then for Quebec, I have a French message with the Quebec flag. The code for this is pretty simple. Here I construct a resource manager where I pass in a type that I use for my resources internally. Then in the callback, I end up getting the culture name from the list box. I construct a culture info. Then I set the current thread's current UI culture to that culture info. This way, any resource lookups that occur on that thread will use this correct culture as well. That may include exception messages. Then to actually look up the values, we call getString on the resource manager for hello, and then to look up the flag, we call resource manager's getObject, and passing in flag as a resource name. Note that we have to cast this to an image. So there are two features here I'd like to demonstrate in the VS IDE to make this easier. The first one is the resource editor, and the second one is the strongly typed resource classes. The strongly typed resource class can be used on the command line from resgen, but I'll show that in the VS IDE as well. So here in the Solution Explorer, you'll see that we have a resx file for our resources. Then I also have different versions of that resx file for French, and then one for Quebec as well. We're going to add a new one right now for Great Britain. So if you go to Project, Add New Item, we want to add an assembly resource file. And so we will give these the appropriate name for Great Britain. Then in here, for the resource string, the name should be hello, and the value should be cheerio. And then here we can move to a different section of the resx file. This will allow us to add images. So here we can click on Add, pick an existing file. I happen to have a British flag. If we rename this to flag, because that is the resource name that we're looking up, this should work out just fine. So if we go back here in the Solution Explorer, we need to make sure this is in the same namespace. Then if we do a build, and then run, you'll see that we now have a British flag and a British string popping up here. So that's the resource editor. It should be a pretty easy way to add in what you want. So the other new feature that we've added into the .NET framework is the ability to generate a strongly typed resource class. To show you what this looks like, if you click on resources.cs here, this is a class that is generated that includes properties for each of the resources in your resx file. So how this helps you is that you could very easily mistype a resource name, like someone could have accidentally put in, a 1 or something like this, and you won't actually get any error eagerly. We can give you an error at compile time if you're using a command line, or even at design time as well. So the way this looks is you type resources dot, and then you get a drop-down list of all the resources in your resx file. So here you can select hello. Also, for here, you can say resources dot flag to get the image. Note that the return type of the flag property was a bitmap, so we don't have to do a cast to image anymore. This way, you get strong typing as well as a better way of making sure that you spell your names correctly, and better discoverability through IntelliSense. Additionally, we no longer need to construct a resource manager ourselves. The strongly typed resource class does that for us. So we can then build a solution. and then run it again. And you'll see that it still works. It still gives us all the cultures. And the code that we've done to do that resource lookup is smaller, faster, and easier to type. We had a few performance tips as well for you when using managed resources. The first performance tip is look at the getStream API on Resource Manager. If you can use the unmanaged memory stream class to be able to use a pointer to your data, you can avoid copying data into the managed heap in some situations. Additionally, if you can put your satellite assemblies in the global assembly cache, the GAC, then the very first time we load them, we can load them in a quicker fashion. We don't have to verify the strong name cryptographic hash on the assembly every time we load it. Additionally, put the neutral resources language attribute on your assembly. So that's basically it for performance tips. To quickly sum up what we covered today, we've talked about using the resource manager, building satellite assemblies, showing how fallback works, showing off the Visual Studio resource editor, and strongly typed resource classes. And hopefully we've given you a good feel for how to use resources going forward. Thanks.
Thanks.